What's going on, Movementers? Welcome to episode 30 of Muvmint Storytime. I'm Christal Clear, and let's go ahead and start off with a prayer. My dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for once again having everybody come to watch another episode of Muvmint Storytime. Lord, I ask that you would just help me to say the right words to help people get going through their week. Lord, I ask that you would continue to encourage me to go through the struggles that I'm going through as well. Bless everybody, everywhere. Every place out there that's going through, especially in the situations that's going on overseas in the war in Ukraine and other wars all around the world. And Lord, I ask you that you would just continue to be with us, and we just give you the honor, glory, and praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so the topic I wanted to discuss today was about detoxing and releasing. The reason why I called this episode Detox and Release is because there's a time where you're going through a situation where it might have been dire, and you had to, pretty much armor yourself up for the situation. And even though the time trial that you're going through might take a while, might take like a few months. The situation I'm going through it's been a couple months now, but at the same time, even though you have to put your guard up and do everything that you need to do to get yourself out of the situation, there should be a time after you get through your period of trials and long suffering that you need to detox and release it out of you. One of the mistakes that I did when I was young was when I was going through the situations, I was letting it bottle me up inside. And I said this in many episodes. I believe it was episode of 6 when I titled it Hate. When you let things bottled up inside of you, the enemy uses that against you. And because the enemy wants you to suffer, he does things to you to manipulate you to the point that it keeps you bottled up in your own suffering, into your own anger, into your own pain that you're going through, to the point that you might react to do something that you don't want to do. I also talked about it in another episode where, because I wouldn't let the anger and the frustrations and everything in my life, I wouldn't release it out of my spirit, it got to the point that the spirit within me became demonic. And I told you in the earlier episode how that was cast out of me. So, there's reasons why I labeled these titles. There's a reason why I labeled that last episode when you were drowning. There's a reason why I picked that picture where even though I was drowning, I had a hand coming to grab me up. There's reasons why we go through these situations. There's reasons why everything always has to happen to you always at once. And I got a Bible verse for that to support that. So I'm going to read out of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Forgive me, I'm using my wife's phone. So I gotta punch in the password. So I gotta read out of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And I'm gonna read the first verse. And it says, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven." So in releasing whatever stuff that was in me throughout this last situations I'm in, I'm gonna reiterate what's been going on in my life. For about ever since April 16th, I believe it was April 16th, I was out of work till the middle of May. My job went on strike, and we couldn't. The contract negotiations broke down, and we went on strike, and I was out of work for a whole month. Also, in the middle of that situation, I suffered a very bad ear infection, where I've lost the hearing out of my left ear for almost 3 weeks. I'm just starting to kind of get it back due to a concoction of antibiotics and steroids that I had to get from my doctor. So I was going through a lot of times and a lot of situations, at that time. I'm releasing this to you. So that was just the situation. But what people didn't know about while I was going through that time trial, the emotions that I was going through. If you see the last episode of Storytime, I looked like I was a wreck, because mentally it got me so down, to the point that it felt like I couldn't get up. And if it wasn't for my wife, coaching me to try to get up and do the episode, you probably wouldn't even have had an episode in the beginning, in the first place. So I was going through a time trial. Think about it on my perspective. I'm proud of the fact that I'm a man that provides for my family. I'm proud of the fact that I can show my kids an example of what a real man's supposed to do on this earth. I'm proud of the fact that I am doing something positive in this world. Just like, not only doing my job as a man, providing for my family, but also doing music for Salvation Records. So there's a lot of things about being a man I'm proud of. But all of a sudden, when things out of your situation, out of your control happens, where you lose your job, you lose your status as a provider for your family, it can wreck you, man. And it wrecked me pretty bad. So like that last episode, I was so beaten out of it, because then I had to find a new normal. I had to go through the picket lines and deal with situations in the picket line. There was a couple times that things got really scary out there, And as a man who doesn't like to confess that he was scared in the situations, I was really scared. Not only scared because, I was in Philadelphia and going through the picket lines. Like I said, Philadelphia, I love Philadelphia. Philadelphia is not a very safe environment to be. And a lot of times I stayed there overnight picketing. What's going on? Watching the game right next to the fire. Situations where city situations where a gun was recovered during the traffic stop in front of the lines. So you don't know if the situation was going to pop off when there was going to be shootings going on between the cop and the assailant. There was a situation where, I'm not going to say the company, the guy blew through the line and almost ran over the gate in front of me and almost killed one of the security guards. And thank God for the sheriffs and the police department that was already out there during the picket lines to stop him. But then you got to think about the other situations that was working me mentally. One night I went out there and I was staying there overnight. I got a call from my wife because my son was crying. My 9-year-old son was crying. And he was worried that I might get killed out there, because Philadelphia unfortunately is a known city of violence, of gun violence, have a very bad gun violence record. So I had to console him, to tell him, like, Daddy's okay. I'm gonna be coming home. God got me. So I had to console him, while at the same time had to toughen up out there on the streets of Philadelphia. So that was nerve-wracking. And not to mention, my wife is going through the situations that, with me. So, it's not just, I'm just a provider. Now she has to put on double the work to provide for all of us. So I was really scared at the time. I was scared about, my future. I was scared what was going to happen to me. I was scared what was going to happen to my kids, I was scared. As a man who don't want to confess that he was scared, And it hurt. It hurt going through what I was going through. And then, like I said, when I lost my hearing, that hurt me even more mentally, because, I wanted to do this album with my brother, and then all of a sudden the enemy just come in and affected my left ear. To the point that if you saw the last recording sessions that we had, I had to ask my brother to tell me when the beat was coming in so I can say my verse. That's a lot of mental things that you have to go through. And that's just not me. There's a lot of people that are going through situations that you have to bottle up. You have to guard yourself inside to the point so you can look like you're making it. You know what I mean? And I always love that old quote when they say "fake it till you make it." A lot of times it felt like I was faking it till I make it, and that's the stuff that I bottled up. That's just some of the things that I bottled up. Like I said, a lot of times I just wanted to cry. A lot of times I felt sad. I felt bad. I felt bad being a burden to my family. I felt bad being a burden to my friends. But I knew that throughout that whole situation, through me being depressed about it and worried about my health, I know that my Lord has me. And that's what Ecclesiastes chapter 3 is about. There is a season for everything that happens. But at the same time, there is a season for you to learn how to be thankful for your situations and learn how to let it go. And if you don't detox yourself, if you don't talk to somebody about the emotions that you was going through, and I didn't even mention the anger that I was feeling, you know what I mean? Because I'm just sorry to be rambling around the bush, but I was also angry through my situations. A lot of those days when I was out there, the weather conditions was very poor. You don't know how many times I sat out there talking to sheriffs and the police and other people in the picket line, and I was out there in the rain getting drenched on, which is probably why I have this ear problem right now. But there was a season for it. There's reasons why these things happen. So you have to learn how to let it go. Because if you don't let it go, and you allow that anger, and I said it in other episodes, you allow that anger, you allow that frustration, you allow that worry, you allow that fear, you allow everything that will obstruct you from your future. If you allow those things to fester inside of you without letting it go, the enemy is going to use that against you. One of the things I always said to somebody, I said, you gotta understand the power of your opponent whenever you're in a situation. So when you know what your opponent is capable of, you have to know their moves before they make that move. So that's what I'm telling you right now. And I love this Bible verse, man. Like I said, I was reading it, and it's a beautiful thing because it describes also like the different times for you to respond. And I'm going to read more to this. So I'm going to read verse 1 again. To everything there is a season and a time and every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to pass away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit has he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? So I just read chapter 3 verses 1 through 9, and it describes all the avenues that people go through in their situations. There's a lot of scenarios when, even though it might be the same situation, you might have to respond to it differently. And it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful that what the Lord said about all the reactions that you would have to go through when you go through your situations. So there was a time where I had to bottle myself up to be strong for my family. There was a time where I had to come home and let it go and cry. There was a time where I had to, to be a healer or allow the God to heal me through this situation. But then there's a time for me to kill situations. And it says a time to kill, but think about it outside the box. There was a time when I had to kill situations in order to get me mentally strong to go through what I had to go through, what I am going through. There's a time for everything. There's a time for you to rip the situation apart from you. There's a time where you have to put things together. But also, there's a time for me, there's a time for you that you have to let it go. Let go of the situations that you're going through. Now, how do y'all let it go? Well, one of the ways I'm learning to let it go is I'm telling you through this episode of all the things that I was going through. It wasn't me being a robot and being strong and, everything was going to go hunky-dory and, and everything was just going to be fine and we're just going to go through that situation and move on. No, I'm confessing to you that I was vulnerable. I was vulnerable through my situation. I was hurt. And on top of that, not only I was hurt, I was disgusted because it just seems like it just would not end. But at the same time, I knew that my Lord had me because everything comes in due season. I knew I was going to get out of it. I knew I was going to get out of the situation. And the confirmation of that was when people who I didn't know, not say didn't know that cared for me, but people who I just knew that I wasn't really acquainted with. I didn't hang out with them all the time but people who I didn't know loved me so much was blowing up my phone, knowing the situation I was going through and asking me if I was okay. And shout out to every one of y'all that checked up on me while I was going through my storm. I love y'all. And because y'all did that, it just showed me a confirmation that God was always here for me. But at the same time, you have to learn throughout your situation. You have to I learned a lot through my situations. I learned that there was a time where people who are with you might not be with you in the end. And that's why I keep telling you, everybody, in every situation you're going through, you have to reevaluate the people around you and realize who is for you and who is not for you. I'm not saying against you because I don't think a lot of people are against me, but at the same time, I knew that a lot of people really, when you think that, that they would be there for you, they weren't. And you have to readjust who's really in your inner circle. You have to. Remember all the times I say, whenever you go through situations, God is either going to show you how is he going to demonstrate his power through the situation or what's he saying about you in the situations. But he also does that to people that are around you to show you the type of environment that you're involved in where you need to tighten up your circle. So through all this was a blessing. All this was a blessing. Even though I'm going through an ear problem, all this is a blessing. Because everything is under due season. Under the heavens. God got you. God's above you. He sees all the situations that you're going through. And he understands what you're going through. But at the same time, you have to, even though I learned that, I have to detox it. I have to let it go. And I'm glad I'm doing it. Because before I used to not do that. So I'm so glad that I'm doing it now. So in this episode, it's a lot of me rambling, but at the same time, it's very therapeutic because it releases how I felt inside. I've just released it all up into the atmosphere. and I'm going to let it go because there's a lot of other things that I need to be involved in. I don't have time to be dealing with things in my past. The past is in the past. Whatever you go through, whatever situation you're going through, the past is in the past. But when you understand that you need help through your situations, you need the help to get past it, you'll be okay. Always, if you can't get through your situation mentally, and you can't move on regardless of what situation that you're in, get the proper help that you need to get so you can mentally move on. Your body cannot take you anywhere your mind does not want you to go. And just remember that. So go do your thing. Get it out of you. It feels so much better that I said this, because it just feels great, man. Get it out of you, man. Just get that hate out of you. Get the fear out of you. Just talk. Say something. If not to your friend, say it to a shrink. If not to a shrink, say it to your pastor. Get it out of you, man. Because the Lord has other things for you to do, and you ain't got time to be dwelling in the situations of your past. So get it out of you and get going. All right. I love you. I love everybody. Thank y'all for praying for me. And like I said, I'm not all the way recovered, but I'm going to be okay. And I just thank y'all for just being there for me. Even the people I don't know that know me, just watch that last couple episodes. Thank you. Because you know what, it's very uplifting that I know that the Lord has my back. And he was using y'all to demonstrate how much he had my back. So with that, I'm going to let y'all go. So stay tuned, stay alert, and always remember you're in the movement. And let it go, man. But get it out of you. Get it out of you before the enemy takes that and uses it against you. Because your enemy is stronger and crafty, more crafty than you think. So beat them to the punch and get this stuff out of you. Detox it. Release it. Talk to you next time. Peace.